why don't we get into Kansas City? Right now, their division is probably the best division in football. They have 2 first-round draft picks in this year's draft. Getting one from the Miami Dolphins for Tyreek Hill. Where do they go in their picks? They need a wide receiver. They lost Tyreek Hill. They're going to have to obviously pay Travis Kelce at the end of the year. Where do they go at their wide receiving position? Where do they go at those picks?
They have 30 and 31, obviously, and while I don't think they'd trade both to move up for a wide receiver, we also didn't expect them to take Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So who the hell knows with Kansas City? But honestly, when it comes to the back, if the top guys we already discussed are gone, maybe they go Christian Watson, right? And Christian Watson is I don't know how much everyone who's listening has dove into prospects just yet. Maybe that's just my pathetic life. But Christian Watson, just know, very big guy, ran the 6th fastest 40 time among his class in this class at his position. And that's important to note for Kansas City because, like Mecole Hardman, Kansas City prioritizes speed. That's all they want. They don't care about anything else. And Christian Watson, even in being big, even in being fast, still registered a 13% drop rate in college. Wow. Remember, he played for North Dakota State. He played against all 53 of his career games against FCS competition, like teams that don't even matter. So I question whether he can translate to the NFL. But either way, whether they go receiver or not, if they don't make that deal up, I think they settle for a cornerback and an edge rusher. And there are a bunch of picks that can go in that direction. Arnold Ebiketie has been making some rounds in the past 48 hours, thinking we're going to squeeze him into the first round. His over-under shrunk to 31.5. We also believe Boy Mafe is going to go in the first round. They could go Kyler Gordon. They could go Andrew Booth, even though Andrew Booth in the last 24 hours, apparently he's done a couple interviews and GMs have come back thinking he's a piss-poor tackler, so he actually might get pushed out of the first round as well. But yeah, I think they go cornerback and edge overall.
So going from a fantasy perspective, everyone was talking about Tyreek Hill getting traded. Also Devontae Adams, also Devontae Adams as well,
and Noah Syndergaard's family.
Yeah, that's right.
So what do you think from a fantasy perspective are the impacts of those guys in their new locations?
For the Chiefs or just rookie wide receivers in general?
For Miami, Tyreek Hill to Miami and Devontae Adams to the Raiders.
I'm actually concerned about the Miami guys. I don't know what to think about Tua's development. Just the fact that last year, and it's a completely different offense, obviously, but last year they tried to make sure he excels at short throws, but they basically just turned him into an RPO quarterback, and it obviously didn't work at all. And then for Tyreek Hill for fantasy, for instance, I'm concerned because Deebo Samuel's wide back usage is actually highly overrated for fantasy. Remember, we want our wide receivers to get targets and carries. And what Deebo did from week 8 on was average a rushing touchdown for every 10 carries. That's not sustainable. Even if I tell you any running back in the league, right? Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, list goes on and on. If I tell you they can average or ask you, do you think this person will average a touchdown for every 10 carries? You will say, hell no. That's what's happened with Deebo Samuel. And now everyone's chasing that value in fantasy. We're not drafting last year's stats. That's not how this works. We're trying to get a leg up on our competition. And so the fact that Deebo in that span also averaged just 4 targets per game, like that's not usage I want at all. And if you're telling me that's how Tyreek Hill is going to be used and we have to bank on touchdown, like a rushing touchdown equity, then I don't want that at all either. And so right now as a top 10 wide receiver at underdog, for instance, I think it's highly overrated. But if he plummets and you can get his value suddenly from wide receiver, I don't know, 20 to 26, that's when I would buy in. But right now I think both he and Jalen Waddle are vastly overrated. And if you do want to target one anyhow, I would just make sure it's the one you think is going to be involved in the passing game more, because that's how we're going to get our fantasy points.
John, where does the Green Bay Packers go? Obviously, they need a wide receiver. They lose Adams in the offseason. They need a superstar guy that can catch the ball in the open field. They might need 2 of them. Where do they go in the position that they are in the first round?
The Packers are one of those threshold teams we look at. Like the Jaguars and Trent Baalke, they don't draft defensive linemen with short arms. As stupid as this is, that's how it works. And that's what makes the Hutchinson-Walker conversation come into light, because Hutchinson has 7% arm length, whereas Walker has 95th percentile arm length. Hutchinson was much more productive in college. Doesn't matter. Baalke still only drafted long-arm defensive linemen because he's a donkey. We also look at the Seahawks. The Seahawks also, going back to the Legion of Boom, only draft lengthy corners. Even last year with Dan Quinn with the Cowboys, they drafted the only corners that were 6'3" and over last year, the only 3 in the draft, because that's what they prioritize. That's what Dan Quinn always prioritized with the Seahawks, and the Seahawks have carried that tradition over to this day. The Packers prioritize athletes. This is all they look for. If you are a high athlete, especially like when we're talking the 95th percentile testing at the combine, you're going on their board. And so when I hear that, I then look to a player like Zion Johnson. They need players on the interior, and Zion Johnson's 3-cone in particular put him as like one of the best interior offensive linemen, not only in this class, but in the last half decade as well.
Wow.
I think they noticed that, given that they need that position. So I believe Zion Johnson is going to be high on their board. And then receivers is really going to come down to who else is there, because as we talked about, Pickens, lots of red flags there. Also an athletic guy, even though I do expect him to fall out of the first round. And so for receivers, I think Jahan Dotson's in play. I think Treylon Burks is in play. And then if we're talking about, I guess, one more that sneaks in at the first round, oh, maybe that's it. Maybe if they go edge instead, it'd be Arnold Ebiketie. Like I said, he's been making rumors. But right now, yeah, I would just make sure, if ever you're mocking or picking a bet on Packers players, make sure you look at that player's athletic traits first.
Yeah, the Packers always are the ones that like always draft like the most hybrid players that have all these great productions. I remember one of the shows we did, it was a different show on our network. They were doing the draft coverage. I'm like, they're going to draft Rashawn Gary. He's like the perfect like Packer prototype of everything they love. And they ended up going with him in that draft. So it was just funny. So just in general, everyone was talking about the crazy offseason we've seen. Do you think this is an anomaly? This is the only time it's going to happen? Or could this be the new norm with all these players wanting out nowadays?
I hope it's not the new norm, because I want a personal life. I hope I don't have to sit around and do this every offseason.
You're getting married now, man. Look at you.
I'm not getting married. We were simply dating. I don't know if it's the new norm, but it seems at least like the new norm for guaranteed money, which makes it concerning, because this year, everything exploded at once, and so no one knew how to handle it. That's why the Jets have been calling about expiring contract ex-wide receivers who can get on an island and create their own space, because whereas they have the cap space, perhaps other teams like the 49ers are dealing with right now aren't sure how to handle it, don't know how to maneuver their cap space to then give a wide receiver according to what the market is now. And it didn't even start with Christian Kirk, to be honest. It really started the moment Bill O'Brien got pissed off at DeAndre Hopkins and traded him, because from that point forward, that's when the wide receiver contract market reset, since the Cardinals immediately gave DeAndre Hopkins more money at his age. And from that point on, Devontae Adams saw that and said, well, I deserve more than Hopkins. I'm better. And then we see what happened with Tyreek Hill and next Deebo Samuel, clearly, perhaps even with A.J. Brown at the Titans, don't give him all the guaranteed money. So I would like to think with a year to adjust, it's not as crazy, but who knows? Really, who knows?
We are talking to BetSperts fantasy football and handicapping analyst John Daigle. Who wins this year's draft? What team do you think will win when it comes to the draft? We've seen this, the Jets last year. A lot of people thought they won. What do you think is going to happen this year?
I don't think the Giants could screw this up. I think they are in the perfect position in a shitty draft to get both their picks right. I believe they are leaning Charles Cross at number 5, which is a massive need, so much so that they are one of the few teams, maybe even the only team actually in his private workout. Remember, his final 2 years at college, every snap exclusively let tackle. At their private workout, they tried him out at right tackle, knowing Andrew Thomas had a much improved season last year. And they also said specifically, they said they're taking the best player and they are not afraid to move Thomas to right tackle, which means that could only be one player at that spot, and that's Charles Cross. They are honing in on him. And so whether they do that or step back, take a cornerback, since we are expecting James Bradbury to not be on their roster by week 1, and then if that were the case, in this mock draft scenario we talked about at the beginning of the segment, Cross and Neal would be there at 6, and then one of them would fall to 7. I don't think there's any way the Giants can play this wrong, so much so that Gardner may be there at 7 as well. If not, they take the best wide receiver to replace Kadarius Toney. So I think the Giants immediately are going to come away as winners.
So one prospect that maybe isn't projected like a top 10 or top 5 prospect, do you think will end up being a top 10 player in the NFL?
Top 10 player in the NFL. Trent McDuffie seems like the fall off at cornerback immediately after Stingley or Gardner, whoever goes 1 and 2. It seems like it's very clearly Trent McDuffie, and he could go as early as 12 2. Well, he can go as early as 9, honestly, to the Seahawks. He'd go 12 to the Vikings. I know the Eagles and Chargers and Saints are also high on him, so I'm not expecting him to sneak past 17, honestly. Beyond that, though, it could also be – so this draft is actually interesting because I don't know if y'all are aware, Jordan Davis, the defensive tackle, and Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher, they actually tested at the Combine as literally the most athletic players at their position ever since the Combine first was invented. So, like, we're seeing a culmination of youth and nutrition happen all at once. And like I mentioned earlier, the shittiest draft ever. This is why teams aren't trying to trade up. This is why teams are trading for 2023 picks. Every team is very aware next year is the big one to go after. This one's just like, it's got to happen. All the players are in Vegas. It's on TV. We already signed contracts, so let's just do this thing. And so the fact that we have teams with needs everywhere, like the Texans and Falcons and Seahawks, honestly, and then players who are the most athletic ever, throws wrenches into these things, because maybe even if a team does have a need or want a specific player, they just say screw it and instead go this uber athlete who they think fills a lot of holes. Especially makes sense for a guy like Pete Carroll, who is like just got rid of Bobby Wagner, right? Is looking to replace that, maybe rekindling memories of the Legion of Boom. And so a player like Devin Lloyd or a Jermaine Johnson, something like that, makes a lot of sense for their defense at 9. I expect them to be the first wrench in the top 10, by the way. So I think it's very interesting, at least, and that's what makes this draft unprecedented and really unpredictable, even in like which rookies could emerge.
Before we let you go, one more question. Charlie Kohler, he's a friend of the show. We had him on the show last week. Where does he go? I think he goes to Green Bay in the 3rd or 4th round. He said that if I'm right, he's going to come out here and take us out for a couple of drinks. So what do you think about that?
How often does he call in?
We had him on the show last week. We're probably going to have him on after the draft. So,
well, as I told you earlier, if he's an athlete, he probably is on Green Bay's radar. Right now, I have him projected as a late day 2 pick. Mm-hmm. So mid round 3, maybe round 4 or 5. I would not imagine he gets past the 5th round. Probably even the 4th round, to be honest. So weird though. I'm not sure, honestly.
I think that's what you said too. Early 4th round pick by Green Bay, I think is what you said.
Yes, I did.
Yes.
Yeah, late day 2, early day 3 makes a lot of sense.
Well, we're rooting for him. We want him to come on, and I definitely want Green Bay to draft him because he's going to come out and have a good time with us. So
yes.
I mean, day 2 is more money, so let's root for day 2.
There we go. Anyways, we really appreciate you joining us. We'd love to get you on after the draft and go over the draft on some of your thoughts and some of your opinions of what happened throughout the draft.
Let's talk fantasy post-draft. You have my number. Let's do it.
By the way, John, it says on your Twitter you won an award as well. Congratulations.
Congratulations, by the way.
I appreciate that. Best NFL podcast. We won it last year. So thank you very much.
Look at you, man. COVID time, and you're winning awards. You deserve it, man. We really appreciate your time, and we'll have you on very, very soon, my friend.
Thanks, boys. Have a great night.